certified incident briefings, real video evidence, strict accountability. You are viewing Bodycam incident reports.
Please, hands up, get on the ground, I'm shot!
I'm in a wheelchair, please.
Stop talking, get on the ground, now!
My chair is right there, I can't move my legs, please listen.
Don't reach for anything!
The body camera footage that captured those 45 seconds of terror would eventually become the most viewed piece of evidence in the history of the state's judicial system. It was 3:15 in the morning on a rainy Thursday when the sanctity of apartment 404 at the Thelonious Heights complex was shattered. Inside, Dr. Alana Sterling had been deep in REM sleep, her body resting in a specialized orthopedic bed designed to alleviate the chronic pain of her condition. She had just finished a grueling week of consulting on a new accessible housing project for the city and had gone to sleep early, cherishing the quiet of her sanctuary. Dr. Alana Sterling was a pillar of her community, though she would never describe herself that way. At 46 years old, she was a renowned urban planner and a former Olympic track athlete whose career had been cut short by a drunk driver 15 years prior. That accident had left her with a severe spinal cord injury, confining her to a wheelchair and resulting in partial paralysis of her lower extremities. Despite the tragedy that stripped her of her ability to run, Alana had never stopped moving forward. She held a PhD from MIT, sat on the board of the National Disability Rights Network, and was the primary caregiver for her elderly mother who lived in the unit next door. She was a black woman who had fought tooth and nail to overcome both the physical barriers of a world built for the able-bodied and the systemic barriers of a society rife with prejudice. Her apartment was her fortress. It was retrofitted with voice-activated lights, lowered countertops, and wide doorways. It was the one place on Earth where she felt completely in control, safe from the stares and the obstacles of the outside world. That safety evaporated the moment the steel-toed boot of Officer Kyle Vance splintered the doorframe of her entrance. Officer Kyle Vance was 23 years old and had been on the force for less than 6 months. He was a legacy hire, the son of a former precinct captain who had retired with a reputation for cracking heads and closing cases in that order. Vance had scraped through the police academy with top marks in physical fitness and marksmanship, but had barely passed the modules on de-escalation and community policing. His psychological evaluation had noted markers of rigidity and aggression under stress, but these red flags were buried under the weight of his family name. Vance patrolled with a chip on his shoulder and a worldview shaped by internet echo chambers that painted every minority neighborhood as a war zone and every black citizen as a potential combatant. He was looking for action, desperate to prove he was a warrior like his father. That Thursday morning, a call had come in regarding a suspected drug dealer operating out of the Thelonious Heights complex. The tip was anonymous, vague, and unverified. The address given was Unit 404. The warrant was for a knock and talk, a consensual encounter. It was not a no-knock raid. It was not a high-risk entry. But Vance, riding high on adrenaline and caffeine, convinced himself he saw movement in the window, a shadow that looked like a man with a gun. He didn't wait for backup. He didn't verify the tenant list. He didn't notice the handicap sticker on the door or the ramp in the hallway. He breached. When the door flew open, Alana woke to a nightmare. The sudden explosion of noise and light sent her heart into a frantic rhythm. Disoriented and without her glasses, she saw only a blinding flashlight beam and a dark silhouette screaming commands she couldn't fully process. "Get on the ground!" Vance roared, leveling his service weapon at the woman in the bed. Alana's mind raced. The ground. She physically couldn't get on the ground without assistance or her hoist. She was paralyzed from the waist down. I'm disabled," she stammered, her voice thick with sleep and terror. "I can't move my legs. I'm in a wheelchair." "Liar!" Vance screamed, closing the distance. In his mind, pumped full of bias and fear, he didn't see a disabled woman in pajamas. He saw a suspect refusing to comply. He saw a black woman in a luxury apartment and assumed she was part of the drug operation, likely guarding the stash. He saw her reaching toward the nightstand where her glasses and phone lay, and decided she was reaching for a weapon. "Don't you move. Keep your hands where I can see them." "My glasses. I can't see." Alana cried out, freezing with her hands in the air, trembling. "Please, officer, my wheelchair is right there. I can't walk." Vance ignored the custom titanium wheelchair sitting prominently beside the bed. He ignored the medical lift hanging from the ceiling. He ignored the grab bars installed on the walls. He saw only non-compliance. "I said get on the ground." Vance holstered his pistol and drew his taser. He didn't pause to consider the absurdity of demanding a woman in bed to lay on the floor. He lunged forward, grabbing Alana by the arm. "No, please, my spine!" she shrieked as he yanked her. Vance pulled with the strength of a man who spent 2 hours a day in the gym. Alana's paralyzed body was dead weight. She tumbled out of the bed, hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. The pain was immediate and blinding, radiating from her surgical sites. "Resisting arrest. You are resisting," Vance shouted, seemingly for the benefit of the body camera he knew was recording, trying to build a narrative of justification in real time. Alana lay on the floor. Her nightgown twisted her legs, splayed at unnatural angles. She tried to push her upper body up, a natural reflex to protect her face. Vance interpreted this as an attempt to rise and fight. "Stay down." He pressed his knee into her back, directly onto the site of her spinal fusion. Alana screamed a primal sound of agony that echoed through the thin walls of the apartment complex. "I can't breathe. You're breaking my back. I'm paralyzed," she sobbed, her face pressed into the floorboards. "Shut up. Stop fighting." Vance reached for her wrists, wrenching them behind her back with excessive force. He slapped the handcuffs on, tightening them until they bit into the skin. It was only then, with Alana handcuffed face down and sobbing into the floor, that Vance looked up. He shone his light around the room. He saw the photos on the wall, Alana shaking hands with the mayor Alana, receiving an award Alana in her racing wheelchair. He saw the expensive medical equipment. He saw the sheer lack of any drugs, guns, or money. But instead of horror, Vance felt a surge of defensive anger. He had committed. He couldn't be wrong. If he was wrong, his career was over, so he doubled down. "You're under arrest for obstruction of justice and resisting arrest." He panted, his voice wavering slightly. The commotion had not gone unnoticed. Down the hall, Elias Thorne, the building superintendent and a former Marine, had heard the crash. He knew exactly who lived in 404. He knew Alana. He often fixed her sink or helped her with heavy packages. He grabbed his master keys and sprinted toward the sound of the screaming. He arrived at the open door just as Vance was dragging Alana across the floor toward the hallway, treating her limp body like a sack of grain. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Elias bellowed, stepping into the doorway. "Put her down, that's Dr. Sterling. She's paralyzed, you idiot." Vance spun around, hand dropping to his taser. "Back off police business, back away, or you're next." "You're hurting her. Look at her legs." Elias didn't back down. He pointed at Alana's legs, which were dragging lifelessly against the carpet. "She can't walk. She's a paraplegic. What is wrong with you?" Vance froze. The word paraplegic cut through the fog of his adrenaline. He looked down at the woman he was dragging. Really looked at her for the first time. He saw the atrophy in her calves. He saw the scars on her back where her nightgown had ridden up. She was resisting. Vance muttered the lie, tasting like ash in his mouth. "She wouldn't get on the ground." "Because she can't, you son of a bitch," Elias shouted, pulling out his phone. "I'm recording this. I'm calling the chief. You better get your hands off her right now." Vance released his grip. Alana slumped against the wall, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face. "My back. Something popped. I can't feel my hands." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of a career ending, though Vance was too stubborn to accept it yet. He stood over her, breathing hard, his mind scrambling for an excuse. She lunged. It was dark. She fit the description. But there was no description of a woman in a wheelchair. Within minutes, the hallway was filled with flashing lights. But this time, it was the cavalry. Sergeant Maria Gonzalez arrived first, responding to Elias's panicked 911 call about an officer out of control. Gonzalez was a 20-year veteran, a woman who had spent her career building trust in this exact neighborhood. She took one look at the scene, the shattered door, the sobbing woman in handcuffs on the floor, the rookie standing over her with a defiant yet terrified look in his eyes, and she knew. "Vance, step back." Gonzalez ordered, her voice low and dangerous. "Step back now." "Sarge, she wouldn't comply. I had to." "I said step back," Gonzalez barked. She holstered her weapon and knelt beside Alana. "Ma'am, Dr. Sterling, I'm Sergeant Gonzalez. We're going to get these cuffs off you right now. Medical is on the way." "He broke in," Alana whispered, her voice trembling with shock. "I was sleeping. He broke in." Gonzalez uncuffed Alana with gentle hands. She saw the bruising already forming on Alana's wrists. She saw the way Alana's legs lay immobile. She looked at the wheelchair by the bed, then back at Vance. "Vance, go to my patrol car. Do not speak to anyone. Do not turn off your camera. Go. Now." As Vance walked past the gathering crowd of neighbors, he saw the accusation in their eyes. He saw cell phones recording his face. He saw the reality of what he had done reflecting back at him. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had brutalized a helpless woman because of his own prejudice and incompetence. Alana was rushed to the hospital. The MRI revealed 3 hairline fractures in her ribs and severe soft tissue damage around her spinal fusion hardware. The physical injuries were severe, but the psychological trauma was catastrophic. For a woman who had worked for 15 years to reclaim her sense of safety and autonomy after her accident, this was a complete shattering of her world. The next morning, the police department tried to get ahead of the story. The initial press release was vague, mentioning an incident during a warrant execution and stating that a subject had sustained minor injuries. They didn't mention the wheelchair. They didn't mention the wrong unit. They didn't know that Elias Thorne had live-streamed the aftermath. By noon, the video of Elias screaming, "She's a paraplegic," while Vance stood over Alana's broken body, had been viewed 4 million times. The hashtags #JusticeForAlana and #FireVance were trending globally. The visual of a black disabled woman being dragged from her bed by a white officer struck a nerve in a country already at its breaking point regarding police brutality. Alana lay in her hospital bed watching the news on mute. Her lawyer, Marcus Freeman, sat beside her. Freeman was a shark in a 3-piece suit, a civil rights attorney who had sued the NYPD, the LAPD, and the federal government and won. "They're going to offer a settlement," Freeman said, his voice calm but intense. "They're going to try to bury this fast. They'll offer you $1 million, maybe $2 million, to sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away." Alana looked at her hands, still numb from the handcuffs. "He didn't even look at me, Marcus. He didn't see a person. He saw a target." "I know," Freeman said. "We're going to make sure the world sees him, and the system that made him." They filed the lawsuit 3 days later. It wasn't just a negligence claim. It was a federal civil rights lawsuit alleging violations of the 4th Amendment, the Americans with Disabilities Act ADA, and the 14th Amendment. They sued Officer Vance personally. They sued the chief of police. They sued the city. The discovery phase was a bloodbath for the department. Freeman subpoenaed everything. Vance's academy records, his text messages, the precinct's training manuals on disability interactions. What they found in Vance's phone was damning. Group chats with other rookies from his academy class were filled with racist memes and jokes about hunting in minority neighborhoods. Texts from the night of the raid showed Vance boasting to his girlfriend heading to the Heights. "Gonna bag me a dealer tonight. Easy overtime." But the most shocking revelation came from the investigation into the warrant itself. The anonymous tip that sent Vance to Alana's door hadn't come from a concerned citizen. It had come from a disgruntled former tenant of the building who had been evicted for noise complaints filed by the building management, not Alana. The tip had given the address as Unit 404, but the records at the precinct had a note attached, "Verify unit number, caller unreliable." Vance had skipped the briefing where that note was read. He had skipped the pre-raid verification. He had gone rogue, eager for glory, and the department had let him. The internal affairs interview with Vance was leaked to the press 2 months later. In the video, Vance sat with his union rep looking smaller than he ever had in his uniform. "Officer Vance," the investigator asked, "did you see the wheelchair?" I saw a metal object. I didn't know what it was. It was 3 feet from the bed. It has bright pink rims. You stepped over it to drag Dr. Sterling. I was focused on the threat being a sleeping woman. She was reaching for her glasses. Did you identify yourself before kicking the door? I yelled police. The timestamp on your body cam shows 0.4 seconds between you yelling police and your boot hitting the door. Is that standard protocol for a knock and talk? Vance remained silent. Did you notice the ramp outside her door? No. Did you notice the medical alert sticker on the door jamb? No. Did you notice that the suspect described in the tip was a 6-foot male, and the person you assaulted was a 5'4" female? It happened fast. It happened fast because you made it happen fast. The public outcry was deafening. Disability rights groups joined forces with Black Lives Matter activists, staging sit-ins at the mayor's office. They demanded not just Vance's firing, but criminal charges. They demanded a complete overhaul of how police interacted with disabled citizens. Statistics were weaponized in the media. News anchors reported that nearly half of all people killed by police have some form of disability. They discussed how Black disabled people are significantly more likely to be victims of police violence than any other demographic. Alana became the face of these statistics, a woman who had done everything right, who had overcome every obstacle only to be crushed by the very people sworn to protect her. The city capitulated 6 months after the incident. They knew a jury trial would be a massacre. The video footage was indefensible. The text messages were a PR nuclear bomb. The settlement offer came in on a Tuesday, $12 million. It was the largest police misconduct settlement in the state's history. But Alana refused to sign until her non-monetary demands were met. She demanded that the department implement mandatory 40-hour crisis intervention training focused on disabilities for every single officer. She demanded that a social worker be dispatched on all wellness checks and non-violent warrant services. She demanded that Officer Vance be stripped of his pension and that the city not oppose criminal charges. The city agreed to everything. Officer Kyle Vance was fired. 2 weeks later, the district attorney, bowing to immense public pressure and the undeniable evidence, charged him with aggravated assault burglary and deprivation of civil rights. The trial was brief. Vance's defense that he was acting in good faith and feared for his life crumbled under cross-examination. The prosecutor played the video of him dragging a screaming, paralyzed woman across the floor side by side with his text messages about hunting. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing, Alana wheeled herself to the front of the courtroom. She looked different than she had before the attack. She was thinner, her face drawn with the exhaustion of chronic pain amplified by trauma. But her eyes were fierce. She turned her chair to face Vance, who sat at the defense table weeping. "Mr. Vance." Alana began, her voice steady and amplified by the microphone. "You broke into my home. You broke my ribs. You broke my sense of safety. But what you really broke was the lie that authority equals morality." She paused, looking around the courtroom, making eye contact with the judge, the press, and the other officers in the back of the room. "You saw a black woman in a nice apartment and you decided I was a criminal. You saw a body that didn't move like yours and you decided I was resisting. You had a badge, a gun, and the power of the state behind you, and you used it to terrorize a sleeping woman." "I have spent my life building things," Alana continued. "I build cities that are accessible. I build bridges for people who are left behind. You tore down everything in 45 seconds because you were too arrogant to check an address and too hateful to see a human being. I forgive you for your ignorance because that can be taught, but I do not forgive you for your cruelty. That is a choice you made." Vance was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. In the years that followed, the Sterling Protocols became a national standard for police departments. They required officers to visually verify mobility aids, to check medical registries before raids, and to utilize de-escalation tactics specifically designed for the deaf, autistic, and physically disabled communities. Alana used her settlement money to start the Sanctuary Project, a legal defense fund specifically for disabled victims of police violence. She retired from urban planning to run the foundation full-time. She never fully recovered physically. The spinal trauma meant she needed more assistance than before, and the nightmares plagued her for years. But she found a new purpose. One evening, 5 years later, Alana was giving a lecture at a police academy, part of the mandatory training she had forced into existence. The room was filled with rookies, young men and women who looked just as eager and nervous as Vance had been. She played the video of her assault. The room went deadly silent. She let her screams echo off the walls until it was uncomfortable, until the recruits were shifting in their seats, unable to look at the screen. Then she cut the video. "Comfort," Alana said, rolling to the center of the stage. "That is the enemy of justice." Officer Vance was comfortable. He was comfortable in his bias. He was comfortable in his power. He was comfortable assuming that I was less than because of the color of my skin and the chair I sit in. She looked at the faces in the crowd. "The moment you feel comfortable using force," she said, her voice ringing with the authority of a survivor, "is the moment you have lost your way. You are not warriors. You are guardians, and a guardian does not break down the door of the vulnerable to prove he is strong. A guardian stands at the door to make sure no one else does. Do not assume, do not prejudge, and never ever forget that the badge on your chest is a heavy weight, not a free pass. Carry it with trembling hands or don't carry it at all." As she finished, the room didn't applaud. They didn't cheer. They sat in a stunned, reverent silence, the lesson etched into their minds. It was a lesson bought with pain paid for in blood, and delivered by a woman who had been broken by the system only to rebuild it better than it was before. The lesson was simple, yet it had cost so much to learn. Prejudice blinds us to humanity, and power without empathy is nothing but brutality.
Investigation officially closed. For additional unedited footage, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for trusting Bodycam Incident Reports.